Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we examine 4 Home Alone horror stories that will make you think twice about staying alone. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. I was staying at an Airbnb for work for 7 months. The very first night, the upstairs bedroom door would unlatch, open, and someone would walk down the stairs. But when I looked, nobody was there. After the second time, I checked the entire house. Under beds, closets, absolutely everywhere, I still found nothing. I was petrified. I almost left. But I figured if it wanted to hurt me, it could have, so I apologized for intruding, then asked if we could find a way to get along. After that, everything stopped for the night. For the next month or so, I would come home and say, "Hello, I'm home." For the most part, nothing much happened. Just some large shadows out of the corner of my eye. Things would be moved, but otherwise, everything was manageable. Things were very normal, and I fell out of the habit of acknowledging the presence when I came home. I also stopped keeping the house as clean as I was at first. The ghost was cool when I was being respectful, but once I started to treat the space like I was the only person living there, it seemed to anger him. Apparently, I was a shitty roommate, and he let me know. One night I was woken up by loud crashing, banging and slamming in the kitchen. I didn't clean anything up after I made dinner. The spirit must have got upset. I went to the kitchen, and nothing was moved or disturbed in any way. I laid back down. Then it all started up again, but this time as I laid there, my whole body started to burn. It felt exactly like one of those red heat lights you use to keep young chickens warm before they get feathers. My body heated up to the point that it was unbearable and burned horribly. I yelled, "Please stop," very loudly, then everything just stopped. All the noise and burning ended instantly. After that, I came home, said hello, and made sure to clean every night. Almost no other interactions after that, but I still knew he was there. This incident happened about 10 years ago. We had a dog that passed away 2 months before this happened. He was limited to the main floor of the house, as he could no longer travel up or down the stairs. During the night, it was not uncommon to hear him get up to get some water. You would hear his paws and nails tapping on the tile floor. He eventually passed away one afternoon. That same evening, my wife and I were awake and lying quietly in bed. We both were reflecting on our beloved dog when we suddenly heard his familiar taps on the floor tiles, as if he was there getting up to get some water. We both said, "Did you hear that?" We were both amazed, because we knew it was our dog saying his last goodbye. About 3 years ago, we were watching TV in our family room. There was a ball on the floor in the middle of the room. The ball suddenly rolled across the room as if something pushed it. It was not too hard or soft of a push, but with enough force to move it about 5 feet. There were also no windows open or anything in the house to create any type of breeze to move the ball. This last story occurred about 14 years ago. A friend of mine owned a house that was about 6 years old, newly built. However, every time I visited, I had an uncomfortable feeling of being watched or an unknown presence in the house. Often, I would hear knocking on the back door or on a table in the other room. My friend and his girlfriend were going through some issues, and he asked me to go by his house to pick up some of his stuff. He gave me the key, and I entered the home to pick up some items when I approached the house. It was dark and eerie from the outside. I was afraid to enter on my own, so I waited for his girlfriend to show up before entering the house. I felt so much negativity in that house and was in and out in no time. A few months later, I was there helping him tile the main floor. The kitchen area was cleared out with our tools and belongings placed on the kitchen countertop. We were working away that night when his keys and cell phone flew across the room. It hit the opposite wall. They were both placed on the countertop. That was when my friend told me his house was haunted. He told me about all the occurrences, shadows, footsteps. He sold the house a few months later, and the new owner called him asking if he ever experienced weird stuff happening in the house. Noises, things moving, people being pushed. This happened about 4 years ago. My son's bedroom is above our family room. It is not uncommon to hear a large bang on the floor when my son jumped out of bed. He was 9 years old at the time. One early evening, I was in the family room when I heard the bang, then heavy footsteps across the floor. Our bedrooms have carpet floors, which also made the hanging center light in our family room rattle and shake with each step. I know my son can make a large noise if he jumps out of bed, but the steps were heavy. I knew something was off as it wasn't normal. I ran upstairs thinking my son was fooling around, but when I entered the room there was nobody there. I checked the whole second floor and found nothing. He was nowhere to be seen. I asked my wife if she was with my son. She said he was at our neighbor's house playing with his friend. This sent shivers down my spine as it was definitely heavy footsteps. It hasn't happened again since then, but I recall that I was on edge for a week after it happened. I was a teenager living alone in an apartment in the middle of a terrible neighborhood. There were drug dealers, gangs, prostitutes, addicts, and crazy people everywhere, including next door. That was during the day. I tried to be home during the day, but especially at night. I wasn't defenseless or dumb, but I had been homeless before managing to get this apartment, so I knew how to take care of myself. Still, being basically a kid, it was scary as hell for me at times. One night I was up late playing Zelda, just kind of hanging out, when someone banged on my door. It was after midnight. All of my lights were off. No one really knew that I lived there. I thought it was a wandering drug addict, so I peeked out the windows which overlooked my front door and the courtyard for the apartment building, as well as every single other front door. Every apartment was dark. There was no one in front of my door. Yet I still hear more banging and knocks, followed by a friendly male voice. "Hey, can you let me in? I just want to hang out." At this point, I was so scared, it took me a minute to build up the courage, but I peeked through the curtains again, this time being careful to look down near the bottom of the door in case someone was kneeling or even laying down. But there was no one there. Yet the knocks continued all night. Usually he would sound friendly and ask me random things. "Do you have kids? I have toys they can play with." Or, "I have some food here if you're hungry." A few times the tone got a bit more sinister, saying things like, "I know you're in there, and I don't know why you're making this so hard. I'm your friend." I didn't have a phone and didn't have anyone I could call anyway, except the cops who I deeply mistrusted. I could have snuck out the back window, then made a run for it. But it was a bad neighborhood in the middle of the night. It seemed like the more dangerous option. Lastly, the man never actually tried to break in. All I could do was sit there all night, listening to him talk and bang on the door, hoping he'd go away. I continued to peek out my front window as well as other windows in the apartment, but I never saw him. He eventually did go away as the sun began to rise, probably around 5 a.m. I spent several months in that apartment. He never came back, but I never found out who or what he was. Not my home, but I traveled to another state to see my friends, who had offered me a good amount of money to clean their old house so they could sell it. It was a beautiful place in the middle of a very small town that looked like it only had maybe 100 people at most. It took almost an hour of driving through the mountains just to get there. It had a fireplace in every room and a grand piano in the main hall, stained glass windows with minor breakage. The kitchen alone was enormous. It truly was beautiful. I had a blast discovering so much of their family's history as I packed it all away. I came across some pretty weird stuff, though. A hole in one of the upstairs bedroom closets that looked like it could have hidden something in it once. A very large hand-carved Ouija board that was almost an inch thick. The electricity in the house was shoddy at best. I was able to get a TV running in the downstairs library, but the light bulbs were dim, so once it got dark, I would be screwed. I was cleaning out the library when I heard the home phone ring. I didn't pick it up because nobody had lived in this house for a long time, so it couldn't have been for anyone. Plus, it wasn't really my business anyway. Anyone who needed to contact me had my cell. When I was done, I began the drive back to my home state. Once I got back, we were talking on the phone, and the house came up. I mentioned in passing that they may want to look at their phone's answering machine, because it would ring at least once a day when I was there. My friend got a bit uneasy for a moment, but then told me that there were no home phones hooked up in that house. It's not the scariest thing I've experienced, just something off the top of my head, but it's stuck in my mind ever since. I always thought it was quite interesting. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.